Grandma, what is that?
Everyone remembers government cheese, right? Remember that box of food commodities delivered to your grandma's house every month, and the kids would run to the door to see what was in it. That iconic block of processed yellow cheese that showed up in school lunch programs and food banks across America. It's become a cultural touchstone, a symbol of government assistance that people either loved or hated. People wrote articles about it. They share recipes. They post photos of that iconic box on social media. But the cheese wasn't the whole story. There was another food, one that nobody seems to remember, one that didn't get the nostalgic treatment. From the 1930s through the 1980s, the USDA distributed something else alongside that cheese, something that millions of Americans receive, but almost nobody talks about today. Canned pork. And here's where it gets strange. The cheese is nostalgic, but the pork is a forgotten chapter. And the more I dug into it, the more I realized why. Because the pork wasn't just unappetizing, it was actively rejected. People fed it to their dogs. They threw it away. They called it government meat and left it in the back of their pantries for years. So my question is this, if the government cheese is remembered as a cultural artifact, be sure to check out our video on government cheese and the caves they store it in. So why did the pork become a ghost story? And more importantly, what does that tell us about how Americans feel about government food in the first place? That's where the investigation gets uncomfortable. Let's go back to where this actually started. The story begins in the Great Depression. The federal government was desperate. Farmers were desperate. Millions of Americans were going hungry, and the USDA had a surplus problem. They were buying up agricultural products to stabilize prices, but they had too much of certain things. Pork was one of them, so they started canning it. Now, this wasn't like buying a can of Spam at the grocery store. These were large, nondescript cans, scorched often olive green or plain silver. The labels were utilitarian. Canned pork. Pork cooked in natural juices. Nothing fancy, just a government-issued can of meat. Product photography of a tall, narrow, cylindrical silver metal food can standing upright. The can features bold black ink text pork at the top, followed by a solid black silhouette of a pig in the center. And here's the part I find fascinating. The meat inside was actually decent quality. Of course, I'm a carnivore. It was pork shoulder, mostly. The USDA was buying surplus from farmers and processing it into canned goods to distribute to the poor. On paper, it made sense. Farmers got support, the poor got food. Win-win, but something went wrong because the canning process did something to the meat. It changed the texture, the color, the appearance, but there was something else hiding inside those cans. And in our next video, we're going to open up that can, literally and figuratively, to explore the science of BPA, chemical migration, and the cancer risks that may have been sitting on pantry shelves for decades, because that's what we've done throughout history. We look at the decisions that were made, the policies, the processes, the packaging, and then we sit back and see how they affected people. And sometimes what we find is unsettling. I started looking into old newspaper archives and oral histories from people who grew up on commodity foods, and I found a pattern. The cheese had its fans. The peanut butter was a mixed bag. The powdered milk was tolerable, but the pork, people hated the pork. One woman from West Virginia wrote that her mother used to slice it up and fry it with onions just to make it edible. Another man from Mississippi said his grandmother called it surprise meat because you never knew what you were going to get. A woman from Oklahoma said she still remembers the smell. She called it unsettling. And here's the thing, this wasn't isolated, it was widespread. Stories of people throwing the cans away, feeding the meat to their dogs, leaving it on the shelf for years until the cans rusted. The pork wasn't being eaten, it was being rejected. So I started asking why. Was it really just the appearance? Was there something else going on? That's when I found the pattern. The pork was distributed through the same programs as the cheese, school lunch programs, food stamps, Native American reservations, food banks, military surplus, and in every single setting, the same response. People didn't trust it. We know how the cheese affected the digestive systems of Native Americans, but did we study the effects of this pork on the humans? Now, I want to pause here because this is where the investigation gets interesting. Because the problem wasn't the meat, the problem was the system. The government was buying up surplus food, processing it, and distributing it to people who couldn't afford to buy their own. And those people knew it. They knew they were getting the leftovers, the surplus, the stuff that nobody else wanted. But here's what I want you to understand. This wasn't just about helping people who couldn't afford food. The surplus came first. This was the exact same scenario we saw with the cheese. The government made promises to farmers, created a system that produced more food than anyone could eat, and then had to figure out what to do with all of it. The hunger relief was an afterthought, a convenient solution to a problem the government created for itself. The pork was just like the milk. The surplus came first, the people came second. The cheese became a cultural icon because people eventually learned to love it. But the pork reminded people that they were poor, that they were dependent on the government, that they were eating what farmers couldn't sell. And that's the part nobody talks about. The pork wasn't just food, it was a symbol of poverty, a symbol of dependence. And that's why everyone remembers the cheese, but nobody wants to remember the pork. The government handed people a can of mystery meat and said, figure it out. Now, if you're watching this and thinking this sounds like a first world problem, you're not wrong, but it's also revealing something deeper. Because when I started looking at the history of commodity foods, I found a pattern that repeated over and over again. The government would buy up surplus food, process it, and hand it out. But they never taught people how to use it. And most importantly, little to no research was done on how it would affect people. They assumed that food is food. But food isn't just food. Food is culture. Food is identity. Food is knowledge. Food is health. And when you strip away that knowledge, when you hand people a can of something they've never seen before, in a can that changes the constitution of it, and tell them to make dinner, you're not just feeding them. You're running an experiment on them. And that's exactly what the government did. They sent this food out into the world, and then they sat back to see what would happen. And that's the part that haunts me. Because the pork lasted for over 50 years, from the Great Depression through the Reagan administration. 50 years of families opening cans of gray or pink meat and trying to figure out what to do with it. And then in the 1980s, something changed. The government phased out the pork, along with a lot of other commodity foods. They shifted to cash assistance, EBT, and the pork disappeared. But when I looked at the official records, I couldn't find a clear explanation for why the pork was discontinued. And that, to me, is the most interesting part of this entire investigation. Because the story of the pork isn't just about pork, it's about how the government makes decisions about what we eat, and how those decisions are rarely based on what people actually want or need. So here's my question. If the government got pork this wrong, if the people hated it so much that it faded into forgotten history, what else is in the commodity food program that we don't remember? What else was quietly discontinued without explanation? And maybe more importantly, when we look at the food policies of today, are we making the same mistakes? Are we distributing food without considering cultural context, food knowledge, health, or what people actually want to eat? I don't have the answers to these questions yet, but I'm going to keep investigating. In the meantime, I want to hear from you. Did your family ever receive government pork? Do you remember your grandparents talking about it? What did they do with it? Drop a comment below. Your stories are the real history.